recording already.
Oh, okay. Well, unrecord for now.
My grandson went to.
Recording now, and we are underway at 7:05 p.m. So to open up the meeting tonight, our first order of business will be to approve the minutes from the November 24th, 2020 board meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
I move.
Okay, is there a second? I see Paul with a second. Is there any discussion of the draft minutes from the November 24th meeting? Okay, all in favor of approving? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep. Okay, that's unanimous. Okay, next is to approve the agenda for tonight's meeting. Is there a motion to approve? Okay, it looks like Rebecca's making a motion. Lynn is second.
I second it.
Okay, I think Lynn beat you. We have a second from Lynn, a third from Bog. Is there any discussion of tonight's agenda?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, all in favor of approving? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's everyone. 6. Yeah, okay, that's everyone. All right, very good. Okay, next up, we're doing resident remarks. Please note, if you are here to remark on HOCO by design, we are going to save those remarks for the new business portion of the meeting. If you have remarks unrelated to HOCO by design and would like to speak to us for 3 minutes now, please use the blue hand raising option in Zoom or turn on your video and wave at me, and I will call on you in the order I see you. Resident remarks, going once, going twice. All right, no resident remarks. Okay, as we discussed at a previous meeting, we were going to dedicate a substantial chunk, if not this whole meeting, to getting community feedback on HOCO by design. So we did block out an initial 60 minutes, just based on the emails that Sandy sent out on Paul's behalf and the anticipation of residents wanting to speak to us. Obviously, depending on how many residents are here to speak or how many turn up over the course of business, we can adjust the time accordingly or move on to other items in the agenda if we don't take the full hour getting feedback on HOCO by design. But with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Paul, who has the lead on this. Paul, if you want to make any opening remarks before we start checking to see what residents have any feedback for us.
Yeah, this is a major effort by Howard County to update their general plan. Basically, what we want to do is to get thoughts from our residents as to where they think the general plan should go. Now, there's been a couple efforts going on. One is by Howard County. The other one has been by CA, that's called CA Newtown Visioning, etc. They're attempting to come up with their position on where Columbia should be going, because it is a separate planning area within the county. Having said that, there are a lot of issues that are cross-cutting that are not unique to Columbia by any means. And so we're here basically to hear your thoughts. I have some biases going in, which I freely admit to. However, I won't put those on the table. I may make some remarks at the end on what I see happening to date. With that, if you would, introduce yourselves. We are being recorded. And I will be using these remarks when I go ahead and enter, where Oakland Mills is coming from after the board makes its decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Do we have residents in attendance who would like to speak on Howard County by design? Again, similar to general resident remarks, just raise the blue hand in Zoom or turn on your video and raise a hand at me. Okay, how about board members? I have something to say, but I'll wait. Does
I have
anyone?
a question.
Yes.
Just in the emails, Paul, that you sent to the board about CA, and their consultants are focusing on certain aspects of the general plan, and you kept mentioning the housing task force. Is that the one that Bill sits on, or are there two groups now talking about housing at the same time?
No, that is the one that Bill co-chairs,
Okay,
and that is supposed to provide the housing master plan
right.
for all of Howard County. And I didn't realize that going in. And I've had some significant issues based on comments made by Amy Gowan, the DPZ director, and how in general that task force is being handled. I've given my thoughts to the board because I honestly think that housing is such an integral part of the general plan that it being separate and independent and being sent in separately. Of course, they'll say, well, this is what it's going to be, but there's no wider input that's being provided other than what's been provided through the Housing Opportunities Master Plan Task Force. Seems like these are on two parallel tracks, and how they will meet together, I have no idea.
Okay, Ginny has a hand raised, and then Lynn.
Yeah, excuse me. Thank you, Jonathan. To piggyback what Paul's saying, it gets even more complicated, unfortunately. The Office on Aging and Independence is also have several task forces, subcommittees working on housing issues. And there's a lot of infighting there as to what will happen and what the results will be. And I have no idea how they intend to try and merge that with what Bill, and I can't think of the other co-chair's name is, task force will be doing. It's very interesting, to put it mildly. So I don't know why there's so many things going on housing. And I have quite a few concerns that are similar to Paul's on the housing issue. And I think maybe we all feel the same, that housing can have an impact, positive or negative, not just on the need, but also on the environment, on education issues, on equity, on diversity. Will have an impact on zoning, et cetera. So it's an extremely, extremely important issue that we need to pay attention to.
Lynn?
Yeah, I just want to say I agree with Paul that I think one of the things that happens in the county and even in CA is we've talked about it before, it's the siloing. So even when decisions are made, you referred to what Amy Gowan was talking about when decisions are made with zoning, rather than trying to look at the county as a whole and coming at it from beginning with what is our goal? What kind of a county do we want to live in? What do we want it to be? It's all broken into these very discrete elements that don't necessarily that do impact each other, but the task forces are operating in a siloed way. But just to step back from that, I think it would be useful talking about all of these players. So we've got CA, we've got the county, we've got task force here, we've got subcommittees there. That Paul, if you could just give us just kind of a thumbnail, sort of a schematic of who the players are in this without too much of a description, because it gets very, very confusing. I mean, for people in the community who are confused to begin with where do board responsibilities, Oakland Mills board responsibilities begin and end versus where does the county come into play, that once we start breaking it down even more, and as we're talking about the future of Howard County for the next 50 years and the future of CA, are oh, help me, somebody,
Extrapolated.
Inexorably.
and not be disconnected from each other, and yet they are, and so we've got these parallel discussions going on all over the place, and it's very confusing.
Yeah, well, I'll take the stab at trying to come up with all the players. I'm not even sure that I know all the players. First of all is what Bill has been involved in, and that's supposed to become the housing master plan, as I understand it.
Mhm.
Second is the CA Newtown visioning, where I guess one of the things they're attempting to do is what, if any, position will CA board take when it comes to the various issues in the update of the general plan, be that housing, open space, you name it. Now, this new one that Jenny just brought up, I wasn't even aware that there was something being done by the Office of Independence. But the one that seems to be the driver of all of this are the consultants that have been hired by the county. On the 14th and 15th of December, they are supposed to provide their results and recommendations. On the 14th, it will be land use, community character, and infrastructure. On December 15th, it'll be market, transportation, agriculture, and environment. And they have basically their research and their conclusions on the HOCO by Design website, all their background stuff. Now, it's going to be difficult for folks to absorb it because each one of these topic areas that I identified has about 50 to 70 pages with a lot of data in it. My overall impression, and going into this, I said I've got some biases, and I do. The bias that I am coming out with based on what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing is that the consultants have determined there's a certain demand for housing, and by God, Howard County is going to provide the supply, no matter what the implications are. I mean, to me, it's basically growth uninhibited by the thought process and what the implications are. And one of the things that Bill has been trying to do, and I totally agree with him, the reason why people move and live here is the schools. That is the major reason. And yet this general plan makes no accommodation or even states that that is the reason, and that's what we really need to build around. And that's a real big frustration. I mean, we're seeing the de facto segregation based on how the schools are rated. All of us know everybody can go to Zillow and find out what the farm rates are in the various schools, what the graduation rate is. And if you go and take a look at the high schools, you can take a look at where people are going to university. That is a factor when people move in here. I mean, I am my neighbor next door, great neighbors. They moved out of here and moved out to, I guess it's Memorial. It isn't Memorial, it's what's the one up on 108? that elementary school.
Centennial.
Yeah, they moved up there because they said, well, they've got better test scores. And I said, you mean you've got problems with Thunderhill Elementary? And they said, yeah, we're looking for the best schools. And so they rented out their house. They moved up there and bought another house. And that's what I see going on. People are moving out of school districts that they perceive, even though all of Howard County has really great schools, when you stack them against the schools in the rest of Maryland, people are slicing and dicing. And it's now become segregation by farm rate, in my opinion. So, and Bill has really done a super job on in an Excel spreadsheet that lays all that information out. And people just don't want to recognize it for whatever reason. That is the driver of what's going on with housing and de facto segregation, in my mind, in Howard County. So anyway, that's a long answer to a short question. I'd be happy to answer any other questions that folks have.
Well, I'll add one more complication. I mentioned that I was hanging out with Phil for a couple of hours this afternoon. So, Phil and I and a couple of other Oakland Mills residents actually are on the housing and land use subgroup of the racial equity task force that the county council formed earlier this year. So we had our first working meeting today. We had an introductory meeting last month. And, one of the questions that came up in there is, well, why is all this other stuff going on different timelines, and independent of this? Because how is all this going to fit together? So part of the discussion we had today was, finding a way to connect with these other groups and hear what's going on, and, find ways of working with them so we don't continue to have this disjointed policy. One of the things we talked about, and I really pushed this in the meeting today, was how the lack of housing choice and housing variety throughout the county, and the segregation throughout the county is really driven by our zoning and our land use policies, and how we really need to dig into that, which I know is something that other groups are digging into. And of course, Bill and I have been talking a lot about these things, and the subject of the schools has come up as well. So, that's not yet another group looking into it, yet another group that's going to be grabbing a lot of data. We decided today that to the extent we can, we're going to grab data that others are already working with, so we're not reinventing the wheel. But the charge of that task force is to come back to the council with legislative recommendations to support racial equity in Howard County. And housing and land use is just part of it. There's also a whole other group. There's an education group, which I was originally supposed to be on, but then they moved me to housing and land use, and I'm fine either way. So, like I was saying, that's going to be another group looking at this. And one of my frustrations, Paul, when you mention the relationship between housing and schools, is we all know it, and neither the school system nor the county have really ever wanted to address that. When you go to one and say there's a problem, they blame it on the other. When you go to the school system and you say, look at the difference in demographics, across your schools, they say, well, there's not much we can do. It's a housing problem. When you go to the county about housing, they say, well, we don't interfere in the schools. The Board of Education is independent. They can form their school attendance areas however they see fit. And I think we really need to keep banging the drum for this. And finally, some things are happening where people are starting to, I think, become more aware and recognize this. But I think it'll very easily just fall by the wayside if we don't stay on top of it. And, that was really one of the things we talked about in the subgroup meeting today for the task force when it comes to housing. There's a lot institutionally, stacked against doing a lot about housing and, spreading affordable housing throughout Howard County while also, preserving our farmland and accomplishing other goals. But, basically what we set up is we've set up a system where you're very strictly only going to have certain types of housing in certain places. You're not going to get any more of it in other places. And unless something gives there, which is what we're going to start looking at, then all these efforts are going to come out with these recommendations. And if the only recommendation is more of something, that something is only going to go in a limited number of places. Zoning has to change, other things have to change, so that all these things can happen properly. Because I agree with what you're saying about the consultants on the thing that Bill is on. That they're saying we need more, we need more, we need more. I don't think there's much doubt that Howard County lacks, for example, affordable housing relative to the demand or relative to what's available in the other what I'll call suburban counties. But we're very, very limited in where we can place it. And the places where we already have it already have a high proportion of it, and the places where we can't have it, it requires more than saying we want it to get it. So I think that's where a lot of this fits together, and I think that's where a lot of that's where, as all this comes up to the level of county leadership, I think we all need to be reminding the powers that be in the county that you've tasked all these groups with looking at this from various perspectives. You need to make sure you're paying attention and bringing it together and not acting on them sequentially. Get a whole picture, get all the perspectives.
Well, my opinion is that based on what I've seen to date, particularly based on what's happened with the Housing Master Plan Task Force, is that the citizen task forces or the task forces that have been set up are, and I'm going to use this deliberately, are nothing else but a fig leaf for what the county wants to do. They have already charged the consultants with where they want to go. And, based on what I heard at the last Housing Task Force meeting, well, you task force have your own recommendations to the extent that we can meld it with the consultants' recommendations, which is what was only, from what I understood, put out there for public hearing. I mean, it's damning what I heard. I mean, a representative from the county said, well, you've got your own recommendations. To the extent we can meld them, we will. If we can't, we can't. And that's where it lies. So I just, I'm very frustrated with this process to date and how it's being handled. Task forces are not being used for input. And even the one that I'm on, the Public Advisory Committee, we've had one meeting. We had a meeting in early November. We're not going to have another meeting until sometime in January. Apparently, the only amount of meetings we're going to have is 5 or 6. And what we've been told is, well, the draft general plan you will get at the tail end, and then you can make some comments on it. So, it's I mean, it's being updated without the citizenry really being involved. They may be involved, they think they're involved, but they're not. Consultants are ruling the roost.
Ginny, did you re-raise your hand, or is that from before? Okay, go ahead. And then Lynn.
Okay. Thanks, Jonathan. Actually, Lynn, this is something you may be interested in terms of the architectural guidelines and covenants. In looking at the number of assisted living, which used to be called group homes, because these are the small residential type homes that have 1 to usually 6, 7, they say to 16, but that's rare. That used to be called a boarding home in the old days. The small things were called group homes. And then we, in our wisdom in the state legislature, changed everything to assisted living, including the big Sunrise, Marriott. So if that makes it clearer for everybody, or if it confuses things more, okay. But if you look at the list from the county of small group homes, I'll just put it that way, small assisted living, 1 to 16, guess what? There are none in Columbia, absolutely none. Now, we all know that's not true.
True, yeah.
However, I can show you the list. I can send it to you. You can go online yourself. And so I talked to somebody that's on this housing county Office on Aging and Independence Task Force. I said, what? And I said, there's not one in Columbia listed, absolutely none. I said, that is not true. Well, they don't have them because of your covenants. And they just say your covenants, or you, no, they actually say because of your architectural committees, or they say because of your boards. So I thought I'd share that with you and you could figure that one out, okay?
But I've seen from the state has their list, and on the state list, you will find them in Columbia. So somehow the county and the state aren't looking at the same list.
Exactly the point that I sent back. I said, first of all, they are reviewed and approved by the state. So therefore the county needs to simply take a look at the state list and plagiarize it. It's not rocket science. That was my comment exactly. But I'm just sharing that. And I'm also sharing with you, the interpretation is blame it on the covenants don't allow anything. Okay, I'm not making any evaluation of that. That's a fact. Take a look at it. For whatever reason, it's a fact. So we're being looked at as we're not doing enough. ADUs are, an addition either in your home or outside your home are more allowed outside of Columbia. They're not inside, again, because of our RAC or our village boards, et cetera. And we want to change that. The people that live outside of Columbia, why are we different? What? So that's one thing.
You're getting an echo.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why I'm getting feedback here, but okay. The other thing is affordable housing. Paul, correct me, but I believe the consultants, or if Bill were here, talking about the need for 40,000 more affordable housing in the county. I know we've talked about this a lot, but I'll be really brief. The problem with that is they're talking about, they feel there's a way of doing it throughout the county. The reality is they're going to try it outside the county where there's no water and sewer. It's not the metropolitan district. In the metropolitan district, there's only 11%
You see Allison's email?
developed.
Yeah.
So we all know
Yeah, I
how
do.
far that's
Hopefully
gonna
no
go.
one-
But they did have one suggestion, which is interesting, and I'll just share this with you, at least with the CA consultants, and they're the same consultants, so this is okay. They suggested, the McMansions that are out in Western Howard County, and even if they're required in a development to have MIHUs, it's like, oh my God, you can't do that. You really can't do that. How do you give away a McMansion as a moderate income housing unit? So what they're suggesting is the McMansion would look like the same McMansion next to it and across the street and down the block, but it would actually be, say, 3 individual units within it, 3 apartments within it that would allow for affordable housing. So that's what they feel is an option in those areas as just one possible option. I think there are a lot more, but that's just one. I guess, and we do have what Paul's referred to in terms of the CA board that Paul represents, Oakland Mills. We have 20 people on that, and their responses were rather interesting to a survey, and I can send this to you guys and you can look at it. But they seem to think that we should have more affordable housing in River Hill, which is kind of a shocker. And they didn't think you needed much more in Wild Lake, probably because Wild Lake's been developed. So only 1.2% of the respondents thought you should do more affordable housing there. But the reality is Wild Lake did not allow for affordable housing. that new development there is not affordable housing. But I don't think most people really remember that or understand it. Long Reach Village Center, the response was 5%, River Hill 4.4%, Dorsey Search 3.3. Frankly, I think they could use a little more affordable housing. I'm not sure where the affordable housing is in Dorsey Search. I don't think it is, and I know it isn't in River Hill. Owen Brown 3.3%, Hickory Ridge 3.3, Kings Contrivance 2%. Oakland and that's about it, where they were trying to say you should put more affordable housing in the village center. So just trying to think if there's anything else here that would interest you.
Well, let me comment on the ADUs. As you all know, I walk around Thunder Hill, and I can see, thinking back, at least 5 houses that have either they expanded the living space for themselves or they have an ADU in the house. I mean, typically what folks have done is they've taken the garage door off and they've put a unit in their garage. And we've been approving that for years. Now, we haven't allowed an ancillary ADU that's standalone, but we certainly allow people to add on to their homes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been going on for years. So, in my own mind, I think Columbia has gotten a bad rap on the ADUs, unless you're looking at what might be the traditional definition of it, and that is a standalone. But the other thing that bothered me with the consultants who, as Ginny pointed out, are the same ones that the county has. Basically, they're pushing that for any currently single family zoned plots, quarter acre or larger, there would be by right duplexes allowed. And the thing that would save Columbia is basically our covenants. It might be by right, but I don't think that it would pass the smell test under the covenants. So, but they're definitely interested in putting higher density. And Ginny is totally correct. The only place to put it right now is where the water and sewer district is, unless they make some changes.
Jonathan?
Go ahead,
So-
Lynn.
Yeah, I have just a few things. One is that I think that it's important to kind of define what we mean by affordable, because in terms of Howard County as a whole, Oakland Mills is full of affordable housing in that, what are we talking about? Are we talking about that a middle-class family or a family making, what we consider the range of salaries under which you qualify for subsidies? What exactly are we talking about? Or are we talking about really what we used to call public housing? Are we talking about voucher housing? What exactly are we talking about? So that's one thing, but that's just, I'm not expecting anybody here to answer that, but I think that it's a way of kind of sugarcoating maybe what they're planning on doing. It's really just that a nice family can move in and they don't have to be, pulling down $250,000 a year in their salaries. And that, I think, we talk about the equity issue and about the segregation in the county, but I think what we really are seeing is we're seeing that it's an effect of income segregation, that if you have the development outside of Columbia now, is that it really behooves the developer, if they can on a piece of property pile in a lot of houses that begin at 800,000. If you start driving around outside of Columbia, if you go even past Turf Valley, if you go out into the Marriottsville area, nothing is being on the market for under under 750 or 800,000. Well, so, you know, we're really talking about a real dichotomy as far as what's going on in the county. And that's got to be public. You know, they can't, even with the density that they have, that has to be public utilities. That can't be, unless the developer is providing their own utilities, which they sometimes can. They can do, you know, like Turf Valley, Turf Valley, I think, did their own water and sewage when they developed that. And that's classified as a golf course community. And so they're under a special zoning. So I think we're dealing with, you know, zoning problems. We're mixing whatever it is that we're talking about when we're talking about affordable housing. I think then, as to your point, Paul, I think that what happens when these sorts of studies take place is that one of the things that the consultant is mandated to do is to get community input. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to pay attention to it. It means that's a little box that they check. We had so many community meetings, got that one covered. You know, we fulfilled that part of our contract. So another problem there. And then a final problem is that this big push for the 40,000 new units, where is that coming from? And I would like the county to be honest with us about it. Is there really this huge cry among residents of Howard County that there's this great 40,000 units of affordable housing? Is this that we're going to be looking at people coming in from Baltimore City, from PG County, from wherever? And is the big push to do this, is it based in some sort of a federal mandate, a HUD mandate, that you have to have a certain quota, or you don't qualify for loans, or you can't keep the loans that we've already gotten from the federal and state government? Where is this push coming from? So that's a question I would like to have answered. Not by you, Paul. I'm not trying to put you on the spot with that, but just from the county. I would like the county to come clean with this. And I feel with these sorts of studies, I think that we're never really told the truth. You know, is it really, they're doing a study, is it really just to kind of placate us and make us think that we have a say in it, where some sort of decisions being made somewhere else for a whole other set of criteria aside from not including what do the people of this community really want? So that's a few issues there that I have.
Well, they're all well taken, Lynn.
I think I can help with one, Jonathan.
Go ahead.
Okay. Lynn, I think the one question you're asking, we can answer. The CA board and the 10 people representing the villages did do just an opinion on terms of preferred percentages for sources of housing affordability. The 40,000 is a separate issue. I totally agree with you. I challenge that as well, especially when they say it's countywide. I keep saying no, and I've said that to the consultant. I've said it publicly. You're pretending, and stop it. You know, tell us what reality really is. They don't want to deal with that. But the workforce is 80. This group said 25% should be in workforce, which is 80% to 120% of the medium income, which is 97,294 to 145,941. 21%, 0.3 said middle income, that they would like it, you know, to be that number of affordable housing units. And that was 60 to 80%. That's 60%, 80% of the average medium income, which is 72,970 to 97,294. I don't think most people realize how high that is. And we're basically talking about people that are actually working, or people that are, you know, teachers, all, you know, government employees, et cetera. But only 9.7% of that group said they would be willing to support in Columbia. Now, this is strictly in Columbia, low income, which is 60% of the household's area median income, which is under 72,000. So that was just, if that gives you any idea of what the county's looking at, maybe.
Is that the county, or this is what
That's what the county uses, and that's what
Okay.
what the consultants asked
The breakdown.
20 members to say, what would you find acceptable in Columbia if you had to place X number of people? In terms of how many to place, by the way, the answer was not, it was about 10%, not, okay. In terms of what percentage, the 40,000? No, most people said no. Some said 5% said okay for that. 10% said is all they wanted was 10% of that 40,000 in Columbia. A few said 20%. Well, let me explain that again. Those that said 10% of the 40,000 were 4% of that respondent group. The ones that said they would take 20% were 2% of that respondent group. The ones that said they'd take 30% were 1.5%, 2% of that respondent group. So the ones that said they'd only wanted 1% or zero, no affordable housing at all, was 5%. So I can get you these charts if you'd like.
Yeah, I would like that.
I
I saw one chart, Ginny, that seemed to say that that it was something like 4.7% an increase in Oakland Mills for affordable housing.
Yeah, that's
right up there with Longreach and Wild Lake.
Yeah, that's the one that I'm just trying to find it again. That I was kidding about. Well, not kidding. I was saying. The question was, where do you put the housing? Okay. And again, the debate is whether you accept the base as 40,000, which I don't, not the metropolitan district anyway. Yeah, preferred housing distribution of units by village center. That limited it, really. So you had to vote on the village center. I think that is debatable. But if you did respond, then River Hill was 4.4. Oakland Mills surprised me at 4.4. Hickory Ridge 3.3. King's Contrivance 2.8. Harper's Choice 3.3. Longreach 5.0. Wild Lake, what we talked about before, 1.2. And it doesn't have any, which people think it does, in the Village Center. Dorsey Search 3.3. Owen Brown 3.3.
And then they included Snowden and Gateway, right? And they were like nothing.
That's a separate chart, okay? Preferred housing distribution by units by area. Village centers, and this was very high. 46.7%. Gateway, 15%. Snowden, 6%. Commercial complex is 40 years old, which would be Oakland Ridge Industrial Park, Guilford Industrial Park. I'm just thinking of what's surrounding us. 9.6%. Undeveloped residential, where we have undeveloped residential in Columbia, but we do have certainly out parcels, not 8.1%. Residential 40 years old, boy, we got a lot of that. 6.3%. Duplexes from single family, changed single family into duplexes, 2.4. ADUs from single family, 3.1, and other, whatever that meant. Well, actually, I think I know what some of that may mean, 2.2. I was suggesting that the mall is beginning to have some concerns and losing retail. This may be a really bad idea, but have we ever given any thought to the pros and cons of having some residential development in the mall itself? Years and years ago, when I was on the county council, I tried my darndest to get the central library located in the mall. I said it would be great for business in the mall. It would be great. I thought it was a fabulous idea. The representative from HRD, or used to work for HRD, Dick Anderson, that was on the county council at that time, said absolutely not. And they just didn't want to give up that valuable property. And it wound up where the central library is now located. And of course, it's really a problem trying to get in and out and parking, et cetera. And it will be moved eventually and be a beautiful new facility downtown. But so, I see potential for different types of uses in the mall. And I don't know why residential, the pros and cons of that couldn't be explored. So that was one of the others, the 2.2.
Yeah, the issue with the downtown, Jenny, is the schools around it, and they're already overloaded. Running Brook, Wild Lake, where do you put the students that you will get from residential? I mean, that's an ongoing problem. We're building more schools, but they're on the periphery of Columbia, not in Columbia.
Okay, good point. I was looking at it more from some creative land use.
We have a couple of schools here that could be renovated and expanded, and it's really not hard to travel west over 29 because, I mean, east over 29 because people travel west over 29 to get to schools.
Yeah, it could happen. Well, I guess
I
you
agree,
proved
Paul, you
my
would
point
consider
because
everything.
this is all revolved around housing. And the housing is the driver for whatever the general plan is going to be. So anyway, it's too bad that, our residents haven't shown up for this. Unfortunately, it's somewhat like inside baseball. If you're an immigrant who's come to this country, what's baseball? Well, general plan to a lot of folks is, what are you talking about? So, but you get whatever the powers that be decide in the general plan, because then zoning is derived from that. So
I have a hand raised.
I appreciate the comments everybody's been making.
Yeah.
Oh, Rebecca had.
Rebecca, and then Sandy.
Yeah, just real quick. I mean, I have lots of different comments on the general plan, but I don't need to talk about those here, right? Just send those to Paul. Is that right?
Yeah, you can send them to me. Yeah.
But I do just want to, something that Ginny said, the consultant said that our HOA policies prevent the housing. What did you call it? The accessory housing?
The accessory dwelling units is a separate building
Yeah.
outside of the existing
ADU.
houses.
Well, I just, the idea of converting our current neighborhoods into denser, this board a couple months ago just voted down that lady who wanted to have older residents in her existing house without even building another building. She was increasing the density in her neighborhood in an affordable way for people who needed it. And this board voted that down. And so I just want to remind us of that in that case, the covenants did prevent something like that. So maybe that idea from the consultants isn't so, silly.
Well, it depends what it is, because on the flip side, we have homes that are not considered assisted living. They're considered group homes all over, and we don't have covenant authority over those.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of a mixed bag, and I think there is a definitional challenge here, and it is odd.
Yeah, I have a group home on my block where we have folks that are mentally and physically challenged, and there's 5 or 6 in that particular group home, and it kind of works, yet it doesn't, because of the amount of cars that impact on the adjoining residents. And that was a consideration that we had in this assisted living place that was going in. I mean, it was a horrible location for it, in my opinion, and that's why I voted against it. But, in other places, it might work. I don't know.
Yeah, it's tough because rules aren't that nuanced.
Yeah, I mean, when you're dealing in a democracy, it's opinions, and people come as I started out, with their own biases. And I freely admit mine. I know where I'm coming from, and I'll tell people that going in. So it kind of is what it is.
Um,
Can I go?
Sandy?
Yeah, Paul, not in defense of people that aren't here, but I did see comments on Facebook of people who actually went on to the interactive site because that was heavily promoted. So they might think that they gave their comments there. So they were Oakland Mills residents. So I don't know if that has to do with it. And I also think that it's not that people don't care about this. I think it's a really tough time for everyone to focus on things other than their immediate life right now. So and so I think it's a tough time also for the county to be making really big decisions when in people's lives it's a tough time to even think about these things. So I think we have a few things against us as far as community input, but hopefully there was input on the interactive site.
I think it's probably people don't really think this is going to affect much, right? Like it's just a vision document. It's not an actual decision being made. So I think it's tough to think that your input would matter.
Mm-hmm.
Jenny, did you have your hand up again?
Yes, I'm sorry about that, Jonathan. Yeah, well, I think I understand what Rebecca's saying, and as far as accessory dwelling units, ADUs, there are two issues. One is within the house, and the other is separate from the house, and the impact on the neighborhood. Usually, the argument is it would be great for a senior to have a small apartment within the house or attached to the house or even separate from the house so that you earn some income that would allow you to, quote, age in place. So that's the argument for it. Then the other point is, well, when that person passes away, whoa, now you got two homes there. What do you do? And so it's an extremely complex issue. And the point that the people on the Office on Aging task force was saying is I think it's within the home and maybe also outside in a limited way. It's allowed outside of Columbia, but not inside Columbia. I would have to double check that, okay? But they were saying that it's not the same. Columbia, quote, is more protected than the rest of the county. And is that fair? I'm not commenting or evaluating. I'm just saying that's what I heard. The other issue is really what we really need to spend more time understanding what a general plan is versus a comprehensive rezoning or a sector rezoning or district rezoning, which is final say on how land's going to be used. A general plan is a more plan. I've done general plans when I was on the county council, and I've done zoning, which actually locks in what can be used on the land. So the general plan, though, is significant because it might say this is the area will be employment. It might have something to do with out parcels. It might even say there'll no longer be new town zoning. It makes no sense anymore. Okay, I'm not saying that's true. I'm saying that is always a real possibility for what the county will do with zoning. What will they do about open space? Will they still require in new town percentages where you have to allocate a certain percentage for residential, a certain percentage for single family apartments, for employment, for open space? Or will they say that no longer makes sense? It's the entire county and we should work on it from a county point of view, because after all, we have so many out parcels in Columbia as well as adjacent to Columbia. Why treat Columbia differently? So that's some of the arguments that that the county is looking at, and some of the debate that's going on right now. And that's not actually changing the land use. It's simply saying, this is where we suggest certain things go, and this is where we suggest they do not go. And then the next steps will be either comprehensive rezoning county-wide, where you'll actually lock in the land use, or you'll take sector one. Let's look at Route 1 and see how we can improve that. Let's look at Route 40. Let's look at Columbia, separate. I don't know how it'll go, quite frankly, but that's the difference, if that helps any. Maybe not, okay.
All right, do we have anything else on HOCO by design? It was supposed to be most of the meeting, but, oh, actually, we spent a good amount of time. I think it's a good discussion. Paul, thanks for all you're doing.
Okay,
All right, the other new business I just threw on there because I had to read the statement at the last meeting was obviously we do have a vacant board seat. I was just going to introduce it today so that everyone can have a month to think about it and we can have discussion as old business. So there are a couple of things we need to think about. One is, do we fill the vacant seat for the remainder of the term? Because, you know, it'll be vacant until April 30th unless we fill it. And two, what process do we use to fill the vacant seat? What we've done historically, and I mean by historically, I mean in my time on the board, others might have a longer history, is we've usually if we decide to fill the seat, we've put out a communication asking people who are interested to submit statements of interest. And if we receive multiple statements of interest, we've normally convened a subgroup of 3 board members, so that way they can, you know, they can meet without having a quorum and requiring open meetings, to interview and get to know the candidates and make recommendations to the board, where the board would ultimately vote on the top 2 candidates that the subcommittee recommends to the board. That's the process we followed, for example, when we nominated Bob to a vacant seat. I think he was the most recent nominee to the board. And on that one, I think Lynn, Larry, and I formed the subcommittee. So again, you know, over the month we have, because we're not going to be meeting the week of Christmas, just, you know, give some thought to whether we want to fill that seat for the final 4 months of the term, and to the whether we want to use that process or we want to revisit the process for filling the seat. The one thing we do have governing us when it comes to filling that seat are the bylaws, and they do say that when there's a vacancy, that it's the board that fills the seat for the remainder of the term. So it is our decision to make, and it is under our authority to fill it with an appointee if we choose to do so. Paul?
yeah, assuming that we try to fill it, what would be the timeline? Because I see that if we appoint somebody, at best, that person would be on this board for maybe 2 months.
So if we're very efficient, I would say the person could be on for a full 3 months. If we were to decide under old business in that first meeting in January that we are filling it and what procedure we're going to use, then we could put out the, you know, solicitation for statements of interest and, you know, have the subcommittee ready. Given the historic level of interest we've had for these vacant seats, it usually has not been a huge amount of workload. The most difficult thing has just been scheduling time to meet the candidates and then bring them in for the board meeting for we do an anonymous ballot, right? Well, normally we would pass papers. We have to figure out some way of doing it electronically. And then the moment we do that, the board member is seated. So, you know, theoretically, if we decide to do this at the first meeting in January, then by probably the first meeting in February, if that's our first piece of business, we could have that board member join us. So they'd be there for both February meetings, both March meetings, both April meetings. So it would give them a quarter of the year.
Okay, thank you.
That appears to be doable, and this is a better way to proceed.
I'm sorry, Bog, the beginning of what you said was cut off.
Yeah, I said that appears to be doable, that the person who is selected can be on board by January, end of January. So he could be on the board February, March, April, more than 3 months.
Right. We've pulled it off before. And of course, we don't know. We'd have to see whether there's interest and how many people. I mean,
Right.
we could be
right.
surprised and get 30 people express interest. And then if we do that subcommittee thing, they'd have a lot of work to do. But
Right, right.
historically, it's been like 1 to 3 people in my time on the board who have expressed interest in a vacant seat.
Right.
Can you listen to a non-board member? Because I saw Bob's hand up.
Oh, well, he's an esteemed member of the election
I
monitoring
know.
committee, so he's almost he's an adjunct. Go ahead, Bob.
And I try not to say too much, but listen a lot. The young fellow who barely lost the last election, there is a precedent in the past for that person at least being considered should they choose to throw their hat in for the 3 months or 4 months. Obviously, the board makes the final decision, but that thought came to my mind that he could have done a lot of things when he lost by such a small margin, and maybe because of his wife, et cetera, et cetera. But he decided not to go for a recount and he moved on. And the other thing, why isn't there chat as an option in your Zoom?
There's not chat as an option in the Zoom because we disabled chat as an option because when it was enabled, there was a lot of chat going on, and it was sort of the equivalent of if you're sitting in a board meeting and all the residents are sitting out in the crowd talking while we're trying to do business. It actually became very distracting, at least for me, trying to host the meeting, because I didn't know if people were trying to get my attention due to an issue or were chatting.
Thank you. That is all.
Okay, so we will bring this back as old business at our first meeting in January, and then we'll decide how to go from there. Okay, old business. Sandy, did we have any updates on increased vehicle speed? I know you wanted to put that on there in case there was anything.
Now, Ashley, is she still here? I don't know if
She
there's.
is.
Yeah, I'm
anything-
still here. I got your email, Sandy, and we've also talked to District 3 about it. So we're working with them to try to figure out what's the best avenue to at least decrease the activity. Ideally, I know we would like to eliminate it, but at least decreasing it to make it not quite as noisy for everyone.
Not just noisy, dangerous too.
So Ashley, while you're here, I may as well bring this up because there's also been kind of a related traffic issue, and that's the roundabout at Stevens Forest Road. And Sandy shared an email from traffic with everyone earlier today. I don't even know if everyone's had a chance to see it, but actually I would say 3 of our board members, because I'll join the 2 who said this, feel that perhaps Stevens Forest Road, being a primarily residential road, shouldn't have a 30-mile-per-hour speed limit anymore, given the bike lanes and the roundabout and just the general increase in traffic. Do you know what approach we would take if we wanted to have the speed limit on that road reconsidered? I recall something from the past, but I haven't been able to confirm it, that a prior effort to reduce the speed limit on Stevens Forest Road did not succeed, but an effort to reduce the speed limit on Farewell Road did. And I think it had something to do with the classification of the roads. Is that something you would be able to look into for us and advise us on how we could proceed with that if we choose to?
Yep, I can definitely take a look at that. Of course, I know Sandy has been really diligent about trying to get the traffic studies done as well. So I know sometimes that will play a role into these things, but I will find out and then touch base with you and Sandy about it.
Okay, thank you very much.
I'll send you, Ashley, the email about the roundabout too, because that is something that might eventually get to you for more than just the speed reasons.
Okay, sounds good.
Thanks.
Okay, anything else on speeding vehicles?
No, they did a speed study and I'll send all that to Ashley on Stevens Forest Road during the summer.
I mean, does anyone else from the board have anything to say on this?
Oh, this is about that. Oh, Bob.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I read the exchange of emails between us and Ms. Middle. I have some observations because I'm right at the corner of the roundabout. What happens is that traffic coming from Farewell and coming onto Stevens Forest, They don't look to the left, and they just come right on Stevens Forest. And that has caused at least 3 accidents that I have witnessed. And Ms. Biddle mentions that there have been no accidents in recent months. But I think that's not true. At least I have witnessed 3 accidents in front of my house. And the main cause was traffic coming from Fairwell and coming onto a Stevens Forest. They don't look for the traffic coming from Broken Land Parkway. They have a right to go. So I think there had to be a driver's education session, how to approach and avoid accidents at roundabout. I do not know if it is feasible, but it would be a good idea to invite residents around Stevens Forest and adjoining streets, how to avoid accidents at roundabout. We can invite the police and the traffic officials. I don't know if this is feasible.
I think it's an interesting thing to consider. If you look at that email from Jen Biddle, I mean, one of the things they say is the issues that have happened there are generally because of people not obeying the basically not obeying the traffic laws as they apply to these roundabouts.
Yeah, either they are ignorant or they just rush through.
Mhm.
And
Right.
this happened in front of my house, 6144. Traffic passing through 6144 has to stop, look to the left, Fairwell. They don't do that. They come right on Stevens Forest. So I think either they ignore or they don't know how to approach and avoid accidents
Mhm.
at roundabouts.
Okay. Ginny, you had a hand raised?
Yeah, I think there's another issue there that I know we talked about before is ice forming on when it gets really cold on the roundabout, and people going around it are having problems. So that's a constant issue whenever it gets freezing. The other thing, the good news is there are also other council members that are looking at the speeding issue from, as Sandy said, from a safety point of view as well, because it's occurring outside of Columbia as well, not just Oakland Mills. So that's good. There'll be other council members that also want to consider whether they would deal with this issue too. That could be helpful to us.
All right, thank you. Okay, I didn't prepare much for a board chair report because we were trying to turn this this meeting over to HOCO by design. We do have the first the county executive's first citizens budget hearing. I believe is it tomorrow? Let me look at my calendar. I think that's tomorrow evening, isn't it? Yes, so 6 o'clock, I'll be delivering our testimony. I think I'm number 9 on the sign up sheet, which means it's not going to be a horribly long night for me. So I'm thankful for that. Even if I get to do it from home, it still beats sitting around till midnight or something, as has happened a few times in the past. So we have that happening. And in terms of other things, obviously we're not having the second meeting in December. It doesn't appear that there's any pressing business for us to address, but should something come up, I will be in touch with everyone. And that's about all I have for a board chair report this time. Ginny, a CCR report.
Thanks, Jonathan. I'll also be brief. Just a couple of quick things. One, in terms of the budget process, again, a reminder, we are going to be getting the staff budget on January 8th. So it will be public on January 8th. I know there are a lot of questions about what will be in the budget, what won't be. That's when we'll all find out together. There'll be a virtual town hall meeting on January 21st that'll deal with the budget, but also perhaps some other issues. But prior to that, residents will have plenty of opportunities on January 14th to testify, January 28th, January 21st, February 11th, February 18th. So the CA board will not be voting on the budget until the 25th. And frankly, that's the date CA board would like to approve it. But if there are problems or concerns that haven't been worked out, that can certainly be changed. The other thing is in terms of the planning report that the CA board will only get that report the end of January from the consultants. And February is not a good month to be handling that. We'll be dealing with the search committee, the search company and what they're coming up with in terms of CEO, president selections. We'll be interviewing. So it will really be in March that we'll schedule public meetings so that the public can tell us what changes they want in terms of whatever the consultants have presented to us. And that again will be a public document that'll be available in February. So you'll have plenty of time to read that and be prepared to make comments on that. I think that's it, unless there are any other questions by anybody.
Thank you, Ginny.
Okay, thanks, Jonathan.
Sandy, show us the money.
There is money. Actually, I sent everyone the finances, and our year to date overall we have $11,466 more than we had budgeted for. So our revenue is 2,300 over what we budgeted for, and our expenses are a little over $9,000 less. I think that the biggest areas, I mean, there's nothing big that glares out. We have our rental coming in from Talbot Springs, which is our biggest one, and then we're getting income from partial income from the Village in Howard and from the Oakland Mills Nursery School, although they're not using the centers, but their income will cover enough for us to have cover the utilities and for Judd going in once a week and continuing to clean the centers, actually twice a week now at Stevens Forest. Our payroll was exactly on target, which is because we have actually cut our staff by 75%. So unfortunately, we have of our 13 staff members, there's 4 of us that are getting paychecks right now. So we have maintained that low staffing, and pretty much it's not going to change until we can occupy the building again, which we're probably looking at May at this point, or March or April, who knows? There's just too many uncertainties. So we're able to meet our budget because of the staffing being so low. Our expenses for the building are pretty low. I mean, we haven't had many repairs. It's just the usual sprinkler inspection, alarm inspection, elevator inspection. Those things add up. We still have our utilities because we can't have the building so cold, but we're not having toilets break every week because of preschool. So that saves us money. And everything else, we haven't had any legal expenses. So our fees, which that comes under, is we're ahead in that game. Our expenses, we did not incur for that. Our janitorial expenses are down. So I think we're doing well as a village to stay within our very, very limited budget and still have a little extra money to have a little breathing room. We are going to spend a little money. I talked to Jonathan and Bill to paint the lower parts of the upstairs wall and some of the walls in the lobby, since everything's been redone. And we're not going in there, and the railings in the front going up to the silo are really in bad shape. So we're going to just get touch-up paints done there. But other than that, everything is looking good inside the building. So, I feel like, it's sacrificing all our employees, but we can't pay people to work in a building that's not open, into a village that's not being used fully. And I keep in touch with them every month or so. They're all anxious to come back when we open our doors. Amy, actually, I did increase her hours a little bit so that we could give our, start putting out the school news and the e-news so that we can, have a more of a look of normalcy as we hit the new year. But she's still not at what she was. And Karina's hours are reduced, but she's, she's getting her work done. Brigida and I are still handling the letters of compliance visits and the rack stuff, which is slowing down. So we all are, we're all doing well in that regard, but able to still have some extra padding in the bank.
Are there any questions for Sandy on the financials? Ginny?
Not a question, just a comment. I heard from a colleague in another village that was really upset because the county changed the number of people that can meet. Apparently, I don't know, but
It's 10.
they had actually scheduled a couple of events and were really anxious to get that revenue, and they were canceled, and they were like, ah.
Well, it's just the nature of this.
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying that's,
No one, I mean, not that we had foresight, but I knew it was going to happen. And so when our rentals canceled, as much as we wanted the income, you could just know at this time of year, things were going to get bad like the spring. And it's 10 people now that can gather in a
Right.
social setting. So you can't have anything. You can't have someone wanted 20 people. You can't have it. And
that's what
we
happened.
got to do
They had
this
to
to get this under control at the sacrifice. I mean, we are in a much more fortunate position than most anyone else who's closing businesses down.
Yeah, no, I mean, CA,
Yeah.
how much income they lost from the tournament that was canceled at the ice rink and went to Prince George's County and Anne Arundel County and Montgomery County where it was, held. So yeah, I know what you mean. And I am always concerned that safety comes first and health comes first. But the thought of possibly our gyms closing, like our daughter's gym had to close in Minnesota, you're laying off people, and our people have been laid off, and fired, let go. So the thought of that maybe happening again is upsetting.
Yeah, well, ours never even came back. So that's,
Well, no, many of
well,
our,
but yeah,
well,
that
many
was
of
it,
ours-
starting last April.
many of ours were
Yeah.
not able to come back at all. And you know who some of them are, and it's, they need the money, they
Yep.
have families, or, it's been a tragedy for many, many people, this whole economic
Right.
as well as a health tragedy.
Mhm. Mhm.
Are any other questions or comments on the financials? Well, I'll make one, and I know this has been said before, but I want to I want to thank and commend Sandy for keeping a careful eye on this, because we're actually in better shape at this point than I thought we would be when we saw the forecast at the beginning of the year. And unfortunately, a lot of that is because of tough decisions Sandy had to make cuts. But on the other hand, as Sandy said, we can't continue to pay people if the jobs they normally do just aren't there, because much of our labor costs come from operating the facilities and holding events. I think another great thing is that we have been able to retain our tenants at the neighborhood centers, and there are a couple of what Bill and I have called win-win situations going on, where we're retaining them at a lower rate than what they would normally pay if things were fully functioning. But it's win-win because our expenses are covered to keep the centers going. They still have access to the buildings if and when they need them, and they're not going to be looking for a new home when they can return to operations. I think that was an excellent way of handling things, where we give some long-term tenants like the school up in Thunder Hill and the village in Howard a break while their revenues may be down, but we also generate some revenue and they get to keep their home. So I thank you for the effort in working with them to do that. And that's not only reflected in the goodwill, but that's also reflected in the financials here, where we could just be taking losses on everything, just because of the what it takes to keep the building heated to a level where the pipes won't freeze and keep the electricity on.
I would second the comments that John's been making. You've done an excellent job under very trying circumstances.
Thank you. And thank
All
you to my
right.
staff. You need to make a motion.
I was going to say, without further ado, I'm going to make a motion that we accept the, I'm sorry, I'm looking at that we accept the fiscal 21. I wanted to make sure I get the quarter right. I'm going to make a motion that we accept the fiscal 21 second quarter financials as submitted by the village manager. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Lynn seconds. Is there any further discussion? All in favor? 1, 2, 3,
Oh,
4. Okay, there we, okay, it's unanimous. And Rebecca's hand was like peeking up from behind her
Yeah.
name tag in Zoom. I couldn't see it there.
Yeah.
There we go. All right.
Um,
Sandy, did you have anything else to report?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Brigida and actually the whole community for organizing the donation drive. We got 2 humongous bags of brand new toys that will be distributed by Columbia Community Care at Stevens Forest Neighborhood Center on Saturday. And Brigida will be filling up a few carloads of food for the food pantry at the Oakland Mills High School that will be distributed next Thursday. So she and her boys are going to be hauling everything over there tomorrow. But people were just so generous. We were at the building on 2 Saturdays. We had bins outside and people were just constantly bringing food. And one car pulled up as we were leaving with 2 little kids, and they just brought all these brand new toys, and it was just really heartwarming. So that was wonderful. So thank everyone and the Warren family. And then also the Columbia Community Care started at Wild Lake Wednesdays and Saturdays. Jonathan went over Wednesday. Everything went great.
Stevens Forest.
Stevens Forest. Judd went and cleaned, and it's the first time Judd actually ever said everything was in good shape. So that was really good. And then I went over there on Saturday later in the day and it's just nice to see. It's really heartwarming that we can use that center in that way because there's such a great and sad need in this community. So if you have donations, you can bring them to the Stevens Forest Neighborhood Center on Wednesday afternoon between 4:30 and 8:30 or 8, and you can bring them on Saturday morning. So you can drop off donations while people are waiting. And it's the only people inside are volunteers and one family at a time walking through. And so everything was good. So I just wanted to say that that's working really nicely. And
Sandy, that's unwrapped, right? Like, do they?
yes, unwrap new. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't wrap them when they hand them out.
I think they are, because I know on their site, they're looking for people to wrap gifts, but then they can label them and they know what age and all that.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And they're going
Yeah,
to distribute Saturday at all their centers.
And there is a lot of need because their hours of service, they're there at 4 on Wednesdays, but their hours of service to the community start at 5. So I went up there at 4 to make sure the heat was working and they got in okay, and helped them unload the van and everything. And there were already probably 6 or 7 people lined up an hour before they were going to open the doors to ensure they could get in there early and get what they needed. And I went back up there again at about, I guess it was about 7:30, and they still had people passing through. So they're not necessarily just drawing from our community, but given their other locations, we figure that a substantial proportion coming to the Oakland Mills events are from our community, and it's definitely showing the amount of need that's out there. So
I did see for Oakland Mills High School, their food pantry, that their last distribution in November, they had 60 families, which were 300 people. And they got wiped clean.
Mhm.
So they definitely need lots of donations. So
Yeah, I did an email tonight on Facebook, and there's a link even to donate money, or there's a link, this is for the pantry, or to go on Amazon and actually purchase food that gets sent to them.
all right, thank you, Sandy.
Thank you.
Lynn, any architecture items?
No, not really. We had a meeting on Thursday, this past Thursday, and I think there were 10 applicants, and they all, including yours, Jonathan, and they all sailed through. So we had a couple of changes on a couple of them, and the applicants went back and made some alterations and sent them back in, and they've been approved. So it was 100% approval. And just in talking about what's been done and all of the concerns with safety and what we can do and what we can't do under these situations, I just have to really give a applause to the RAC committee members who have really gone above and beyond, going out and looking at all of the sites and joining in on the Zoom meetings. We've had so many residents take part in the meetings, and I think more so than usually come to an in-person meeting. And it's been pretty good, because I think it's going to be valuable for us in the long run, because people who are applying for applying for a change to their own house get to see and hear what other applicants are proposing. So it has kind of a motivating effect in seeing what people are doing and all the great stuff going on, but also seeing the quality of the applications that are going through. And of course, I would be remiss if I did not give kudos to Sandy for having just jumped in and handled this, and all of the work being done to get the Zoom meetings going and the applications scanned and up on the website and running the meetings and et cetera, et cetera. And of course, for Brigida for jumping in and working on the covenant compliance site visits as well. So all of that, all good. So we're having one more meeting. We have one applicant for the next meeting, which is I think on the 17th. But we're gonna get together, and if no more applicants, we'll just
Bring your eggnog.
Yeah, wish each other a happy holiday.
I still can't believe you approved my proposal to mount the carcass of my old Pontiac up on my roof, but you signed off on it.
Oh,
No, I'm getting new doors.
Treatment.
You did promise to take it down after Christmas, though.
Well, yeah, of course. Then I'm just going to stick it back in the side yard. I'm kidding.
Actually, it's been great. It's
I
been
have
great.
an application I keep meaning to file, but my landscaper keeps pushing back his start date, so that keeps pushing back my date of when I actually have to get my act together and get the papers filed. So maybe I'll do it by then, just so you have something to look at.
All right. Thank you, Lynn. All right. So what I'm going to do now is let's do the bulletin board now, and then we'll need a motion to go into the closed session. Assuming that motion succeeds and we go into closed session, if any residents want to stick around, what I'm going to do is put you in the waiting room. While we're in closed session, you will wait in the waiting room. When we come out of closed session, I will readmit you to the main room so that I can announce the outcome of the closed session, and then we'll adjourn the meeting after that. But in case any residents decide not to stick around, let's just do the bulletin board now so they don't miss that part. All right, so I will start with Lynn.
Nothing more.
All right, Paul. Oh, Paul, you're muted.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, on December the 15th, the DC and Metroplex BWI Roundtable will be meeting. One of the things we'll be looking at is the sound contours and where the monitors are being placed by the airport. That's something that has to be done, at least the noise contours has got to be done every 5 years under state law. So where those contours are obviously impacts folks. But we're attempting to meet on a monthly basis now. We have a new chair. And as I said, the vice chair is Deb Young. So we've got good representation from Howard County.
Great. Thank you, Paul. Bog? Bog, you need to unmute.
I'm now on mute.
We hear you now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we hear you.
Yeah, nothing much. I'm okay.
Okay, thanks, Bog.
Well, glad you're okay.
Yeah.
Rebecca?
No, nothing.
Okay. Ginny?
Just wanted to wish everybody happy holidays.
Thank you. You too, everyone.
She stole
You
mine.
too.
Yep.
Amy, Amy, anything
Ho, ho,
from the
ho.
front office?
Ditto. Ho, ho, ho. Happy holidays.
All right. Sandy?
And happy Hanukkah and happy holidays.
Well, that's a holiday.
I
Yeah,
said, but I added it. It's
Yes.
tomorrow. It's 2 nights from now.
Well, I was going to do happy holidays as well. And everyone just please stay safe and stay well. It might be different holidays, but they can still be happy if we stay safe and well. So please do your best to do that. All right, so we do have a couple of personnel related issues to discuss, which require a closed meeting because individual names of staff members will be discussed. Is there a motion to go into the closed session?
I move we go into closed session.
Okay, Lynn
I
makes the
second.
motion. Okay, Bog seconds. Any discussion? All in favor? Okay, I think that's everyone, right?
Yep.
Okay, all right, so let's
Before you
see.
start
Jonathan,
talking,
I'm going to stop recording. What, Amy?
yeah, so I'm not going to this. Are you keeping track of everything and the adjournment time and everything?
Yes, can
Or
you
do you want me to stick around?
can you stick
when we-
around for when we come back out?
I can do that, yeah.
Okay, just in case there's, so that, because that way you can record